One of the hardest things for me in life has been to overcome bad encounters with Christians and churches. The reason why I have made several videos on this topic is because bad church experiences are one of the number one reasons why people give up on God. Before I go any further, I want to say that if you have ever experienced a hurt from a Christian or a church, I apologize to you for what happened. And I want you to know that I very much understand church hurts, and I care. Throughout my 20 years of failed church experiences, I always found it kind of unbelievable that the very same people who claim to represent Jesus and a so-called God of love oftentimes had a contempt in their heart for those who were around them, even in a church setting. How could this be? Now, I'm going to be fair here and say that it was about 5% of the Christians I knew who were genuinely kind, compassionate people who really made you feel like they cared about you. However, sadly, many Christians did not make me feel that way, and the best way I can describe them is they were Jesus without a heart. Yes, they knew all the teachings of Jesus. Yes, they went to church and had all of the Christian vocabulary and accessories, but they lacked the kind, compassionate heart of Jesus. It's sad that the negative experiences stick with us more than the positive ones, maybe because the negative experiences hurt. When I was going through all of those tough church hurts for years, it was really hard because I thought I was the only one this was happening to. I also struggled with my view of God because, inevitably, when a person who says they represent God rejects you, if you have not firmly formed your own positive identity and view of God yet, then you think God is rejecting you. So it messes you up. Over the years, I have learned that there are, in fact, a lot of people out there who have church hurts. For me personally, I really struggled with how to handle my church hurts. And I came to the conclusion that I couldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater and say that God doesn't exist. God does exist, so I had to find another way to deal with all of the things I experienced and all of the difficult questions that came with it, such as, why did God allow these painful things to happen to me? Why did God call me to go to a church where I don't fit? Why didn't God speak to the hearts of those people who said the negative things? Why didn't God show them what they did wrong? Why didn't any of them ever apologize? How can these people call themselves Christians? Why are so many Christians unable to show the love that Jesus said they should have? Back in the 90s and early 2000s, I was involved in the Gothic scene. Now, God has since brought me out of that very dark place, but back in that time, that's what I was into. Now, interestingly, it was during that dark time that I felt a very powerful inner conviction to join a church. So I used to sometimes wear my Gothic clothes to church. Now you need to understand that this was 20-ish years ago, and back in that time, wearing alternative clothing was considered very strange to mainstream society, especially Christian society. However, I thought, well, this is how I like to dress. If I can't be myself with the person who created me, God, who can I be myself with? A handful of people in the church supported me in being myself and wearing my creative attire. However, as you may imagine, there was a larger number of people who were not fans. Sometimes when I was at that church, some of the other members would look at me with this silent look of contempt that said, "What are you doing here?" And I always wanted to say to them, "I'm here for the same reason as you, because this is where God called me to be. Why do you think that just because I look differently from you, that God couldn't have possibly called me here?" Perhaps it was this disconnect and disdain on their part which led to the day when a minister said some very negative and judgmental words about me right in front of me in a public setting. She was in a position of authority, and I guess that's why she thought she had the right to say those things. She may not have ever given those words a second thought, but for me, those words caused deep pain and problems for years. See, it's things like this that make people walk out of church, throw away their Bible, and discard God permanently from their lives. And I can understand those feelings very well. Now, if I had been strong in that time when that minister botched ministry, if I had had my own firm connection with God and a strong self-validation, maybe the negative words she said wouldn't have affected me so much. But in that time, I was already drowning in an ocean of confusion, fear, and doubt. God already felt very far away, and that's why I was in church. See, I was in fact in the right place, doing the right thing, trying to work out my salvation as the Bible says in Philippians 2:12, trying to sort out what I believed. Sometimes when other people judged me for the difficult things I was going through, I wanted to say to them, I really wish you could go through what I've been going through because I would really like to see how you would handle it. The hurts I had from Christians were a big block to me for years. They blocked me from wanting that Christian God, from wanting to read the Bible, from wanting really to have anything to do with Christianity. And one day I started to think, why should I go to hell because of Christians? So you're telling me that they're going to be dancing and having a good old time in heaven, and meanwhile I'm going to be suffering for all eternity in hell? Because their contempt and judgmental behavior made me unwilling to receive God's grace and salvation? How fair is that? And I decided no. No Christian who is abusing their authority and botching ministry is going to block me from God's love and peaceful eternity in heaven. So I asked God to help me with these wounds of rejection that I had from His people. I asked Him to help me to even want Him after what I had experienced. It took many years for me to work through my church hurts. During this healing time, one thing I learned is sometimes God allows a controlled failure to happen in our lives. It can be brutal. You may not even think God is there when it happens. Did He see that? But God always has a plan. He is going to restore your heart if you let Him. And even now we can see some of the good that God finally brought out of all the pain I went through. Now I'm making this video to help someone else. During my healing time, I also learned that God never judges us for being hurt. He doesn't see us as having quote-unquote issues. He sees us as having wounds, and He wants to heal those wounds. In time, I chose to forgive the minister who botched ministry, even though she never apologized. God's healing worked, and I found acceptance from God. And I was able to finally surrender to His plan of salvation, which is Jesus, the Son of God. So, as someone who has been on the receiving end of Christian contempt many times, I now want to share my thoughts on 7 ways to avoid being Jesus without a heart. Number 1, no matter what a person looks like on the outside, always remember they have a feeling heart on the inside, just like you. They also have a soul. It's so easy for us as human beings to just immediately judge other people. But before you do that, ask yourself, is this attitude going to help this person make their way back to God? Or is it going to push them even further away? For my part, every time a person judged me, even if it was just a negative, unspoken vibe, it did nothing to help me make my way back to God. Remember that Jesus Himself said He didn't come to judge, but to save. He also said He doesn't want anyone to perish. Let's continue on with other ways to avoid being Jesus without a heart. Number 2, people can tell if your compassion is fake or lacking, even if you don't say anything. So if you have contempt for people that you're trying to help, you're probably doing more harm than good. And you might need to take a break and ask God to help you with compassion. Number 3, don't assume that everyone who is at your spiritual meeting or church has a strong relationship with God. They might actually be struggling with a lot of things, and that's why they're at your church. In fact, they may not have even come to a church in 20 years, and the last thing they need in that moment is a judgmental Christian. Number 4, let's discuss this widely popular mantra: there are no perfect churches. If you find a perfect church, you would ruin it. Having been on the receiving end of this statement several times, I can tell you this is absolutely the worst thing you can say to someone who has a genuine church hurt. It's called blaming the victim. This person has a wound, and that wound needs care. So how do we care for these wounds? Number 5, apologize to them for what happened, even though you didn't do it. Yes, that's right. Take ownership for someone else's mistake and show this person that you care. Number 6, instead of giving your opinions, just listen to their hurt. Let them talk it out. Most people need someone to listen instead of talking. Keep in mind that most people already have a lot of negativity about themselves in their minds and from their media influences. So when I'm talking to someone, I usually don't say anything. But if I say anything at all, I try to be different and be positive. Number 7, in addition to listening, ask if you can pray with them. Offer to lead them to God's love and healing in prayer. If they say no, it's okay. Just respect their answer and don't pressure them. You can still pray for them later in your own time. In conclusion, the world is a huge mess, and everyone is just trying to do the best they can. Having a compassionate attitude towards others can help to undo miles of damage caused by Christian contempt.